Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create new possibilities, from intelligent automation to security that hunts for threats in the wild. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM. Let's create. Learn more at IBM.com.
So make sure you check it on out. We'd greatly appreciate it if you're in the San Francisco area or you want to come on in. And then don't forget, April 22nd to 24th, we have the big Vegas event, the SOR fan party. You, me, whoever else shows up. Amy Vegas O is going to be there. And a lot of really cool people. So make sure you check that on out and let us know if you are coming, because we want you there. Downshift, how are you? Thanks for joining us. Sweet Donna C, nice to see you. Twerking Alien will be in Vegas. Twerking. Just like that. All right, we got like 30 seconds before we got to get going. And Penman, nice to have you here. Russell Gill again, good to have you. And let's see here. Craig Weiler is our guest. We're going to get into some cool stuff regarding the paranormal tonight. If you don't know what the Ganzfeld experiment is, you will after this evening. Trust me on that. Hi, Mr. Lurks-a-Lot. Good to see you. And, busy times around here. And we're going to have more busy times coming up, but it's all in good times. But for now, horns up. Let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and now on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. All right, we got a great show for you tonight. Craig Weiler is here. We're going to get all paranormal, and the Ganzfeld experiment is the topic du jour. Then in hour number 3, we got a great story from Swamp Dweller coming from the swamp. Super Duke from World Bigfoot Radio will talk some cryptids on the Cryptid Report. Shirky Poo's got the news as well. Craig Weiler is a graduate of UC Berkeley, parapsychology journalist, speaker, and blogger on the science of parapsychology, the skepticism, and the physics. Craig Weiler began his spiritual path during the New Age movement, teaching and practicing psychic healing. A Ganzfeld experiment, from the German word the entire field, is a pseudoscientific technique used in the parapsychology to test individuals for extrasensory perception, otherwise known as ESP. The Ganzfeld experiments are among the most recent in parapsychology for testing telepathy as well. And we're going to find out what intrigues Craig about this. Craig Weiler, welcome to Spaced Out Radio again. It's been a number of years, but we're glad you are back. How are you?
Hi, Dave. Thank you very much for having me tonight. It's great to be here, and I'm doing great. I'm just really happy to be here.
I'm telling you, man, the only thing that's changed between you and I is our hair color. That's it. That's it.
Older and fatter.
Oh, tell me about it. Tell me about it.
Yeah.
Last time I chatted with you, I only had one chin.
Yeah, well, I grew one too. It's just the way it goes.
Yes, the ever-expanding chin. I don't know what that's about, but it just happens.
Yeah.
It happens.
Cheeks, too.
I hear you. I hear you there. Craig, let's introduce you to our audience because you haven't been on in a number of years, and our audience has grown substantially since then. And I want to make sure that everybody gets to know who you are. How did you get involved in parapsychology?
Back in 2008, I started getting into blogging, which was, quite new at the time. And I've always been a writer, and it was a really good format for me. I started getting into politics and other things, kind of nosing around, and then I started talking about paranormal stuff, and immediately on one website ran into a bunch of skeptics, just really, really hardcore, kind of angry type people. And I was like, what on earth is this? I hadn't run into anything like that before. And so I started looking. They were saying, there is no evidence for psychic ability. What if you think you're psychic, take up Randy's challenge. And I looked all this stuff up. I started researching all this stuff, and it's like, wow, this isn't anything like what these guys were saying. This is like completely different. And the deeper I dug, the more interesting it became. And then at one point, it was just like, I was hooked. This was my thing. I tell you, if I had known about parapsychology as a kid, that would have been my career path. I would have just totally got into it. This was the science I could get behind. The whole thing just completely excited me, getting into the science of psychic ability, because there was all this stuff. There's a lot of bullshit from the from the New Age movement and whatnot, and none of it really rang for me because you couldn't prove it. And then when you get into the science, all of that changes. They don't make claims that they can't substantiate. Their claims are very limited about what they say they've discovered is limited, and they're very cautious about it. And all the language is very precise about what they've learned and what they haven't learned. That's what I needed, accuracy. This is really what it came down to. And so I've been into it ever since. At this point, I'm also the science editor for Paranormal Daily News. That's the thing I'm doing these days is I'm writing for them and looking at, previewing anything scientific that comes across in the paranormal articles.
You came across this field as an enthusiast and an inquiring mind rather than an experiencer. For you, ever since then, have you developed your own experiences, even before the Ganzfeld experiment, to see if you could have any sort of contact from the other side?
That's actually, it comes naturally to me. One of the reasons that that parapsychology was so fascinating to me was because it was something I could relate to my own experiences. I was into psychic healing and all this sort of thing. I understand what it's like to be an experiencer. It's just the science part, I just geek out on it. This is just my thing. It's the detail, the complexity of it, and a lot of the things that you learn along the ways about reality. It's all very fascinating.
For you, having more of a scientific mind, there is always this great debate as to why there is such hatred and dismay. Maybe hatred's a little bit too strong of a word, Craig, but dismay and for the paranormal field. I mean, there's a lot of brilliant minds in this field, some scientific, some who are, more amateur scientists and citizen scientists trying to figure out what they want to do in this world. And so for you, what has been the challenge in trying to bring other scientists to get involved with paranormal to show that, the results aren't hacked, they aren't faked, there is something going on. Is it paranormal? Well, that's what we can call it, because it's not normal, the results we're seeing.
That's an interesting question. I would call it the $1 million question, because literally that somebody recently spent, had I think a $500,000 prize and $1 million total given out to people who provided evidence for the afterlife. That was the Bigelow Institute. This trying to get the scientific community wrapped around the idea that psychic ability is real is probably the biggest challenge in science out there right now. And a lot of people are trying to get that message across. The resistance at this point is not scientific. It's not even rational. We're going to be discussing the Ganzfeld tonight, and this is the major flagship experiment for parapsychology. But there are so many others out there as well that have a tremendous amount of evidence behind them. All the things that you look for in science, that they have them. So the question is, if you have all this scientific evidence, why is it so difficult to get through and establish psychic ability as a fact? And the answer is that you have this enormous resistance, as you were talking about, the skepticism. There are organizations that devote themselves to trying to dismiss psychic ability as not being real. You have major media organizations that simply won't they won't print, or they won't publicize any positive results without providing an incredibly negative review of it. And so the question is, why? Why all of that? And I think it's because the idea that psychic ability is real touches something very deep in some people and scares the crap out of them at a level that they can't really acknowledge.
Craig, for you, the challenge in trying to blend ESP and that type of psychic intuition with the paranormal, the supernatural, is this something you were convinced that everybody has the ability to do?
According to the scientific theories out there, the major one being one by psychologist Jim Carpenter, is that yes, everybody has psychic ability. However, some people can access it consciously better than others. The theory that's out there is that psychic ability actually operates all the time, and for the most part, we're just not aware of it. But it's part of our normal senses. It works like seeing, smelling, hearing. But for some people, it's strong enough that they notice it.
How does one tune in to their own intuition?
Well, I think pretty much any New Age guide will help you along the way. I mean, it's not like it's a secret how to do this. Meditation is a normal method of accessing psychic ability. You typically want to be quiet. You want to have a distraction-free atmosphere, clear your mind, and be receptive to information. And there are 1,000 different ways to describe this through many different practices. But, basically it's calm down, calm your mind down, be receptive, and wait for information to come in.
So personally for you, have you always been in tune, or did you have to make yourself go in tune?
I'm not in tune all the time. But if I choose to be, unless I have a great deal of stress in my life, it's not particularly difficult to simply relax and be receptive and then be relatively psychic.
Well,
I don't... Go ahead.
What's the difference between being relatively psychic and psychic?
Well, there are professionals, mediums and psychics, who work very hard at their craft, and they practice this several hours a day being psychic. And if you practice something, It's a skill, and you get better at it. So they can drop into that particular state of mind relatively quickly, get information more accurately, and then do this on a regular basis because they're professionals. They practice all the time. Whereas for myself, it's just something that kind of lurks in the background, and if I want to do it, I try. If I want to do it, I'm usually successful, but because I'm not professional at it, I don't practice all the time. I am, sometimes it's good, sometimes it isn't.
Okay, so when you are in tune trying to figure things out, are you... I'm trying to think of a proper way to ask this without sounding like an idiot, so please pardon me for this. How often are you accurate with what you are thinking is going on?
It depends upon the topic. Some areas with psychic ability are easier to access than others. It's my feeling that psychic ability is mostly tuned towards emotion rather than objects and physical details and all that sort of thing. So it's easier to sense emotion. Now, in my particular case, what I end up using it for is what's going on with the cat. Where are the cats? Something involving cats, because we have cats, and with cats they can't communicate directly. So if you need to know something, you have to connect on a deeper level with them. I don't really need it for a whole lot, because for most things in life, for most people, your ordinary senses will take care of most things, which is why psychic ability sort of sits in the background, and it's only when you can't use your other senses that you can get into a situation of ambiguity, and then when you don't have an answer, when you're not thinking of an answer, when you're not trying to figure it out, when you're just going, okay, there's nothing here, I can't figure this out at all, then it's time to relax, and perhaps the information will come in psychically.
Okay, so if I'm getting in tune with something, let's say you have a book on your shelf that you want me to focus in on, and you want me to find a line on page 58 and tell you what it says. Is that kind of what we're talking about here? Like a remote viewing style?
There are people who do remote viewing. I don't. That it's one of those things that takes a lot of practice to become professional at. One of the things to keep in mind here is that our memory doesn't work like that. We generally, let me just say, there's an experiment out there that somebody used to demonstrate how this works. They had people draw a dollar bill from memory, and then they had people hold the dollar bill next to them and then draw it. And if you look at the dollar bill from memory, it looks like a 3-year-old drew it. It's very basic, and there's not a lot of detail there. And if they had the dollar bill next to them, they could duplicate it pretty well. And that's our memory. We don't store things as full images. So when we're trying to pull something psychically, we're not pulling from a full image. We're pulling from sort of a framework that our mind stores, because that's what we do with memory.
Okay. Well, and that makes sense. That makes sense on what we're doing. Is we have Craig Weiler here on Spaced Out Radio. For you, as you are performing these experiments, how many people are you dealing with on a daily basis who want to learn this type of intuition or to open themselves up to their intuition?
I have no idea. I'm mostly a writer, so I will read up on experiments that other people have done, and then write for the general audience, so that I can take these very technical topics and break them down so that the necessary information gets to the point where somebody with no experience in the field can actually read it. That's most of what I do.
Okay, so what are you looking for in the results then if you're reviewing them to write it?
Well, mostly, my personal goal is the curiosity of reading this stuff to start with, and then breaking it down to a level where people who don't have that kind of science, that don't have the background, they haven't done this level of research, so they can understand it. So it goes out to readers. I have no idea who actually sees the stuff.
Right. Right, but you don't have people who will, like we have fans who will respond to what we do on this show. Do you have people who will maybe respond to you about, your stories and what they think is going on?
What I do get occasionally are people I'll have people contact me, and usually they're in some sort of crisis because of whatever is going on in their lives, and they think some of it might be psychic in nature. That kind of thing. Those sorts of people. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not really qualified to help them. If I can handle relatively easy stuff, but the people that contact me are almost always in some sort of crisis.
What kind of crisis would lead somebody to this? Is it a paranormal crisis of some sort?
Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create new possibilities, from intelligent automation to security that hunts for threats in the wild. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM. Let's create. Learn more at IBM.com. Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create AI with integrity, not bias. Security that hunts for threats in the wild. Cloud management that requires less management. And new ways for business to do business. Let's create, at scale, right now, together. Let's prototype. Let's tweak. Let's test. Let's adapt. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM. Let's create. Learn more at IBM.com.
All of them can be summed up as this: I'm having these psychic things happen and they're scaring the crap out of me. I don't understand what's going on. And usually it'll be something that's a little bit unusual in the psychic realm, so they have a hard time finding it. These might be things like people who are electromagnetically sensitive. Might be somebody who, for example, is like super sensitive to just way over the top sensitive to other people and doesn't know how to handle it. Mm-hmm. That's typically, those people will typically be younger. And then every now and then somebody's got some other psychokinetic stuff going on.
What's the most interesting thing you've seen in this field so far?
Interesting for me is the science, and I would say the most interesting studies that I've run across have to do with psychic healing, because that's a subject that's near and dear to my heart. And there was one scientist that did studies on lab mice with incurable cancer, and he had a great deal of success working on them. That I found fascinating.
We got to get more into that in the next half hour. I am very, very intrigued in psychic healing. Very intrigued by this, on how it works, what we're doing, and what kind of remedies are there out there. I mean, gee whiz. I mean, can we heal ourselves psychically?
Yeah. Yeah, it's actually not that hard.
Wow. What kind of healings? You know what? We're going to get into that next half hour. But for you, have you had it done to you?
Yeah. It. So most of the time when I have something wrong with me, I've never had cancer or anything really dramatic like that. But you know, I'm in my 60s now. Stuff isn't working quite as well as it used to, and so I have to focus on those parts of my body and then try and figure out what is the emotional, physical thing going on. Because there's always something emotional attached to it.
Right.
And some of that can be quite intense.
Well, let's get into that when we come back here. Craig Weiler on Spaced Out Radio, the Ganzfeld Experiment. Maybe he can heal me. Because I'll tell you, my mouth was working tonight. Pounded back a full pizza on my own. I haven't done that in years. God, it felt good. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. Seriously, I pounded a full pizza before the show tonight. 8 slices. I haven't done that in years, and I just wasn't getting full. So I just decided to keep going.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Oh.
When I got to piece number 7, I started getting full, and I was like, "Oh hell no! I'm finishing this." Normally, I finish like the minute I'm full, I'm done. Like the other night, I was having homemade tacos for dinner. You know, normally I eat 3 or 4. I was stuffed at 2, right? But this time, I was at slice number 7, and I said, there is no way I'm putting 1 slice back in the fridge. I can't leave it lonely. So I stuffed myself.
Oh, man.
No, I did. And I'm proud. I'm very proud right now. I'll pay for it in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
But that's okay. I know. Parababes, 5 chicken tacos today. Oh, that sounds good. And you didn't save me one. I could have pounded that with the pizza.
Oh, that's a lot of food.
Oh, my God. Trust me, I'm feeling it now. I'm feeling it now.
I bet.
Oh, yeah. What do I like on my pizza? I am a green pepper, pepperoni, mushroom, and olives and onions kind of guy. On thin crust. Don't like the thick crust. Yeah. And, I went hard. I went hard. That pizza had no idea what was hitting it tonight. No idea. That pizza came out of the oven, Craig, and it was like, hey, we're going to go. You know, maybe somebody's watching a game or something. No way. No, I was like Jaws on people in the ocean. That's what I was like.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, yeah. And I'm going to be honest, I don't regret it. I don't regret it. Next half hour, probably will have to go refill my water bottle. My water cup. And before there's any argument in our chat room, yes, ham and pineapple is a good pizza. Pineapple on pizza works. It does. And Dirty Filth, I know you're in the chat room. It's foyer, not foyer, foyer. Some people's children. Anyhow, how you doing?
Are you directing that to me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm actually doing really well. The work is it's physically hard, but it's interesting. I've been working on a building for months now, and I'm finally to the sheetrocking stage. So all the work, putting all the stuff in the walls and whatnot, and basically building an interior frame, a couple rooms, and all that.
I wish
it's all starting to come together now.
I wish I could be able to do that. I am so useless when it comes to home construction. So useless. I could picture it up here. I have no idea how to do it. No idea.
Well, it's a skill. It just takes time to learn.
Yeah.
And more tools than God.
Oh, trust me, I can tear. Excuse me, I can tear down. Can't put it back up. No way.
I've recently had to deal with tools. So it's like I've worn out a heavy duty sawzall. I wore out a heavy duty rotary hammer. All this stuff had to be replaced. And I have a professional skill saw, and it's starting to wear down. It's just like it's expensive stuff to replace.
Mm-hmm. We have about 45 seconds.
Okay.
Let's see.
Yeah, so it's just a matter of you got to be doing it all the time to get good at it. That's really all there is to it.
Yeah, I just choose not to. It's just easier that way. Big thank you to Aiden, Shelley, and Flash Forward for the awesome super chats. Hi, gorgeous Gloria. How are you? The super chat is a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. And thank you to all the veterans who are tuning us in. We love it that you are here with us. Here we go, everyone. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Good to have you with us tonight. My name is Dave Scott. I appreciate you tuning us all in. Want to remind you that if you missed most of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot. Read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight with Craig Weiler. He is one of the people looking into the Ganzfeld experiment. He's done the experiment trying to bring ESP out to everybody. Who wants a little ESP? Let's just throw it in the air. See who picks it on up. You can have some, you can have some, and you can have some. Craig, welcome back.
Thank you very much, Dave.
All right before the break, you mentioned something kind of profound, which is psychic healing. What the heck is this all about?
Psychic healing is one of the areas of psychic abilities that people have been doing since the beginning of time. It's a relatively ordinary thing. I mean, they have. I'm sure you've heard of Reiki.
Yes. Which is
a normal hands-on healing type of thing that you can learn. And so for my part, when I looked into it, I ran into a book by Bill Bankston. He's a psychologist who did experiments with laboratory mice that were injected with an incurable cancer, and then he ran experiments and cured about 85% of them, which was just really remarkable. I mean, these mice, they should have had absolutely no chance at all. Okay, so they're mice that are specifically bred to have absolutely no immune response to this particular form of cancer. I mean, you inject them with it and they're dead within about 30 days. So he had these mice in the lab. They were injected with the cancer, and then he had both believers and skeptics alike do the psychic healing according to his instructions. And there was, 85% success. So these mice that were destined to die from this cancer 85% of them survived. That's a really remarkable number. That I mean, when you think about something like that, it's like, holy smokes, why aren't we using this, right? And it turns out that psychic healing, though, isn't a cure-all. In this particular case, what he discovered was that it works well with aggressive cancers, but if they're relatively slow-moving types, apparently it doesn't work as well. And one of the most interesting things that he's discovered through his personal practice is that if you go through chemotherapy or radiation or something that suppresses the immune system, psychic healing does not work at all. So psychic healing then isn't about actually sending out your waves and healing people. Woo! It's about boosting the immune system of the person so that their body recognizes the cancer and deals with it effectively. And this has been borne out in experiments where people they've had the effect measured, where they're laying hands on somebody, and a scientist will study whether anything's coming from their hands, whether they feel the glow or whatever. And generally, nothing measurable happens. So, but the hands still work. So what's going on? And the answer appears to be that there's some sort of an information transfer or something that's not measurable is going on, and it works. The effect is very, very visible. Another fascinating thing that came out of that study was that they had control mice that were receiving no healing at all in another space in the hospital where they were doing the experiments. When they got checked up on, some of them healed just by people checking up on them. So apparently there's this field effect going on as well. And in order to have the control mice die the way they normally would, they had to move them to another city to make sure that the healers had no contact with them at all, didn't think about them or anything. And then finally these control mice would behave normally. And so there's the experiment. It's yielded some really fascinating stuff.
Can we psychically heal for major diseases?
I don't know. It depends upon the situation and the particular person. One of the problems with the whole field of psychic healing is there's very little data. If you look at modern medicine, they have data on everything, and they know pretty much, what works, what doesn't, who's a good candidate, who's not a good candidate. And in the area of psychic healing, in terms of medical studies, there's almost zilch. So they know that doing some healing work helps somewhat, but there isn't the data there to be able to say, well, you're a good candidate, psychic healing will work for you. There just isn't the data there.
Okay. So how can we use this on ourselves successfully?
It's much better if you have somebody help. Having another person there will make a huge, huge difference. It's not something you really want to take on individually, normally. I mean, when I work on myself, I have the ability to get inside and unlock my own emotions and stuff. But you really should have somebody help you with that. It's not. I've been doing this since I was like 15, so this is a little bit easier for me. But for most people, there's that sense of connection with other people that makes a huge difference.
Okay. So could I heal you just as well as I could heal myself? Or can I, if I look at my dog and my dog is limping, do I put my psychic energy onto my dog's leg or hip or knee to try and render what the pain is, what's causing the pain? Is that kind of how it works?
Kinda, yeah. If the dog will sit still for it. Pets don't always cooperate. I have a cat with cancer. I've been trying to help him with it through psychic healing, and he just will not sit still for it. He won't. As soon as I'm gearing up, that cat he's gone. Well, he won't deal with it. So with animals, it's kind of either they're going to lean into it or they're going to reject it, and there's not much you can do about that. But if you're asking, could you heal me? If it's like if your shoulder doesn't feel well, you could put your hands on my shoulder, and with healing intent, yeah, you'll do something. There'll be some effect.
My friend Pascal used to do that with my little dog Zero. And she was always a miserable little dog to anybody who wasn't family. But with Pascal, the minute she saw him, it was like right over to him, and he would just lay his giant paws down on her, and she would be passed out within minutes. Because of the healing energy that he was giving her. It really is amazing.
That sounds about right.
So
yeah, go ahead.
So what's the difference then between psychic healing and something like Reiki?
They're the same thing. Reiki is a form of psychic healing that's taught according to a very specific tradition. So it has, there are studies for Reiki, medical studies, and there are meta-analyses of those studies. And it's very legitimate. It works. It doesn't work on everything, and they're slowly gathering data on where it's most effective.
Right. I'm curious in regards to your thoughts on Reiki. Do you perform Reiki yourself, or do you just have it done as a healing practice to you?
I don't normally take healing practices from people because if I have an ailment of my own, my personal practice is to, as we discussed earlier, to go into my own mental, emotional state and find out what the emotional lock on that particular part of my body is and unlock it. It's a very difficult practice, but it goes quickly and it's very effective for me. I've never been able to teach it to somebody else.
I remember the first time I had Reiki, I never believed in it. Thought it was a bunch of BS. And my partner, she had, we were having a bad time, and I was really stressed from work. I was in a real dark place, had some friends turn their backs on us, and my back was killing me for about 3 weeks, like horrible pain. And I remember my partner, she put her hands on my back. She goes, I'm going to try this Reiki on you. And I'm like, that woo-woo crap doesn't work, but if you feel like it, go for it. So I feel her put her hands on my back, and I was screaming. My back was in pain so much. And she goes, I'm not touching you. I'm like, I can feel your hands. Take them off. And she's like, I'm not touching you. Turn around. And she was 6 feet behind me. And so she started pulling all of this stuff out of me. Like, in her ways, it was like razor blades coming out, like swords, pulling swords out. And eventually, after about half an hour, she got within about a foot of my back. And then within about another 10 minutes after that, she was able to actually place her hands on my back. And I was like, no more pain. I never believed in it. I thought it was absolute garbage until, like you said, you have to have it happen to you.
Yeah.
And now, any of my spiritual friends offer up a little Reiki there? Oh, Dave's in. Dave is totally in.
Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create AI with integrity, not bias. Security that hunts for threats in the wild. Cloud management that requires less management. And new ways for business to do business. Let's create, at scale, right now, together. Let's prototype, let's tweak, let's test, let's adapt. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM. Let's create. Learn more at IBM.com. Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create AI with integrity, not bias. Security that hunts for threats in the wild. Cloud management that requires less management. And new ways for business to do business. Let's create, at scale, right now, together. Let's prototype, let's tweak, let's test, let's adapt. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM. Let's create. Learn more at IBM.com.
It's a good, well-established practice, and I'm happy for people being able to use it, because that means you're staying off of drugs, in some cases surgery, and when you have physical ailments, there's always the emotional part. It's upsetting to be ailing. I know, for example, when I've had knee trouble, and all of a sudden, you lose all this mobility. It's really hard to deal with emotionally, because normally you're moving around and all this kind of stuff, and suddenly you're walking like you can't do much. And psychic healing, it just it takes care of this stuff relatively quickly. You might not heal all in one shot, but over a small amount of time, yeah, you'll heal. Things will get better. Be more like how they used to be.
I think this isn't a question, this is a comment from Amber. The Reiki practitioner doesn't cause the healing, nor are they the source of that healing energy. They are a channel for the energy. Would you agree with that statement?
Change energy to information, and it's probably a little bit more accurate. The Reiki practitioners are not sending any measurable energy. I'm going to put it that way, measurable. Because when you're looking at science, it's about what you can measure. So what I think is happening is that there's an information transfer, which is something that's not measurable. And the information is what the person needs in order to heal, that their own body is really doing the heavy lifting there. So the Reiki person isn't necessarily channeling energy so much as channeling a focus that the other person uses in order for their own body to do their healing. That's what I think is happening. It's we need more data. That's really what that comes down to.
Always comes down to data. Always comes down to data in regards to it. But there is something happening. There is a change. I know there's certain times where if I'm getting Reiki healing, there are certain areas where I totally feel it. Like if somebody puts their hands on my lungs, I could totally, without even touching my lungs, just me doing this, I can already feel the pressure on my chest and on my lungs. If somebody does that to my back, I can feel that pressure. Don't even need to be touching. It's just an energetic flow that kind of runs with everything.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I can feel all the energy. It's really easy for me.
Right. So for you, let's turn the tables here a little bit. For people who may not understand what the Ganzfeld experiment is, what is it?
The Ganzfeld experiment is it's the flagship experiment of parapsychology in that it's been replicated to death. I mean, there are literally thousands of trials out there. It's a telepathy experiment. And the whole point of it was to demonstrate the existence of telepathy. The experiment is, the thing about the Ganzfeld experiment is that it's very sophisticated in terms of teasing out the ability to see, for science to see that telepathy is happening. This is an experiment that arose out of, I don't know if you remember Zener cards.
No.
Those 5 cards with the wavy symbols on them that they used to use a long time ago. Shows up in like old shows and stuff. They used to use cards in order and have people try and guess the correct card. And this was, and then they'd have somebody think about the card, and then you'd have to guess, and then they'd see how many right guesses you got. And this experiment involved what?
Okay, now I'm remembering.
Okay, so the Ganzfeld is an evolved version of that. So instead of having cards, the receiver, or instead of trying to think about cards, the receiver sits back in a very sensory in a very sensory deprived state. So they cut ping pong balls in half and put them over the eyes so that they have diffused vision. They pump in white noise into their ears, and the person is laying back. They're comfortable, so that they're in a space where they can receive psychic information. They've made them a lot more comfortable. They've taken away distractions, and so it's much easier for the person to get psychic information that way. And then the person sending the signal is likewise. They don't have a lot going on around them. They have to. They're given a picture that they're transmitting psychically to the other person, and so the person laying back in this relaxed state with the ping pong balls over their eyes and white noise in their ears has to guess which picture that they picked or try and describe it in some way. So the person, the receiver, is, when the experiment is done, is given 4 pictures to choose from and has to pick the correct one of those 4 pictures. That's called a forced choice experiment. They can only choose one of the 4 pictures. This means that they have a 25% chance of guessing the right one just by chance, right? 1 in 4, 25%. So if they do better than that over time, then there's an effect going on that's better than chance. So, for example, in the Ganzfeld experiments, when you do thousands of trials, what they've discovered is that people hit about 33 to 35% as opposed to 25%. And that's how they know that there's an effect happening and then that telepathy is taking place. So that's the basic experiment. What's really interesting about it is the stuff they're learning from that experiment. Because when they used to use Zener cards and stuff, they had a very small effect, and they had to do a lot of trials in order to find out what was going on. With the Ganzfeld experiment, they don't have to do as many trials because the effect is larger. And because the effect is larger, they can tweak this experiment and find out whether something will whether something they do makes the effect bigger or smaller. See, if you have an experiment that's just basically, right on the edge, you can't tell if something works a little bit less or something works a little bit more because you're not working with much of a margin. But the Ganzfeld has a good margin of success, so it can be slightly less successful but still successful if they tweak it some. So they'd find out, well, let's try music, see if music works. Well, you're barely above chance with music. So people aren't transmitting music psychically really easily. It's like, okay, well, let's try twins. Holy smoke, that worked really well. Twins apparently are really good at telepathy between each other. It's like, okay, well, let's try this with artistic people. Holy smokes, that works really well. Artistic people, especially ones that are in artistic fields, turns out they do really well at telepathy.
Go figure.
And so by tweaking the experiment, they can find out, they start doing personality profiles on people to find out who does better and who does worse. Turns out that if you have an experiment where you share results, extroverts do better. And if you have experiments where you keep the results kind of private, introverts do better.
Is there a difference between male and female in the statistics of who does better?
Um, that's a good question. There are, I think there's more women who are better at telepathy. They have the personality. They have the more intuitive feeling personality types. But I think they're. I think when they're doing the testing, they're not really that far apart.
We've got just over a minute to go here on Spaced Out Radio. To complete hour number one, Craig Weiler is our guest tonight. Ganzfeld experiment. What about with children? Has this been tested with children?
I don't remember seeing data on children. I don't know. I don't know if they teased out the data for children. Most of them are adults.
Would you like to see how children would react, considering, at a younger age, they're still supposedly all connected at that point?
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting. That these kinds of experiments, it's kind of hard to get kids to sit still, follow directions, that kind of thing. This kind of experiment requires a lot of patience.
Okay.
That kids generally don't have. So I really don't know on that one. I mean, we know kids are intuitive. Where they really show up is in reincarnation research.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Man.
It is. It's like there's this age group, I think between like 3.5 and 7 or something, where kids remember all this amazing amounts of details from past lives.
Wow. Craig, I'm going to get you to hold on right there. We are going to go to break here at the top of the hour. Craig Weiler, the Ganzfeld experiment, parapsychology. What is going on with ESP on Spaced Out Radio? We continue it with hour 2 next. Craig Weiler, once again our guest. Stay tuned. Spaced Out Radio. We'll be back right after this break. All right, Craig, I'm just going to go refill my water cups here. I'll be right back in a couple of minutes, okay? We got 6 minutes.
Yeah, I'm going to go do a bathroom break myself.
All right. Be right back, people. Wrenches, ban the chat rooms. right. Sorry about that. All right. There we go. Alien Critter, how are you? Good to see you. Oh, hey, Clam. Nice to have you here. Who else is coming in here? Let's see, a Russian troll bot came in. Very nice. Thank you, Wrenches, for taking care of that. And that's it for right now. Having fun, Craig?
I am having a blast. Thank you, Dave.
Oh, yeah. Bonjour, Stéphane Baudin. How are you? Right. We got just about 1 minute here.
Okay. So can they see us?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. They're hanging on out. They're hanging on out. All right. A big thank you to Pam, Aiden, Shelley, and Flash Forward for the awesome super chats. Really appreciate the love and support on this show. And here we go, everyone, with the second hour. Your questions coming up. Put them in capital letters.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter @SpacedOutRadio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We really do appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America and digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club, Fastigium. Fastigium is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter @SpacedOutRadio, Instagram @SpacedOutRadioShow, and on TikTok @SpacedOutRadio. We continue on tonight with Craig Weiler, the Ganzfeld experiment. What is happening with ESP? And we're glad to have you back, Craig. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Dave.
All right. We're going to take some audience questions because we like to get the audience invested in this show. And if they're in our chat room on YouTube, we will be able to answer those questions because I will ask them. And let's go to Amber right off the bat here. Amber is wondering, Craig, what is your take on remote viewing or astral projection?
Remote viewing is absolutely a thing. And I don't know that there's a difference between that and astral projection because what exactly is happening here, we don't really know, but we know that it works. Remote viewing is a huge big deal in terms of the quality of the information that people have been able to get from that over the years. I'm sure some of you have heard of the Stargate program. This was run by Ed May and Russell Targ. Russell Targ is, well, actually, both of them are still pretty active in the parapsychology field. Ed May in particular has a set of four I think CDs that contain declassified files that he and his team have been categorizing and generally categorizing and putting it in a form where it's searchable. These were files from the CIA that were recently declassified. Sometimes it has it does extremely well, and we don't really know what makes it work really well. Sometimes, and then sometimes people have trouble getting an effect at all. And so what they generally do is they'll do this in teams. You might have 4 or 5 people remote viewing the same thing, and then collecting that data and finding out how the...
Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create new possibilities, from intelligent automation to security that hunts for threats in the wild. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM. Let's create. Learn more at IBM.com. Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create new possibilities, from intelligent automation to security that hunts for threats in the wild. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM. Let's create. Learn more at IBM.com.
Visions came out, whether there's some consistency there. It's a whole field. So yeah, remote viewing is totally a thing.
Yeah, and you know what? I still haven't been able to draw the difference between remote viewing and astral projection. You know, I really haven't. I mean, I'm somebody where I have astral projected before, and I have also been able to pick up remote viewers who have been looking into what we're doing around here as well. And I think it's very an interesting concept when you can pick up on the energies of that happening.
Oh, yeah, that's a fascinating thing to be able to pick out people looking at you. I personally haven't done that myself. I'm not really into remote viewing personally. It's kind of popped up on a couple of occasions, but I don't really spend much time on it. It's not really my thing, personally.
That surprises me.
It takes time. It takes time, a lot of time in practice, and I've just devoted my energy to other things. It's just a question of not having an endless amount of time to do everything that interests me.
Very true. Follow-up from Amber. Craig, have you seen any psychics in action in any form?
Yeah. I mean, I've had contact with psychics. When I was in the New Age movement, I worked in psychic fairs as a healer, and so I ended up knowing quite a few psychics over that time. They're nice people, most of them. There are some psychics are given to extreme personality traits, but for the most part, they're really decent people. You know, they're cool.
What makes a good psychic from a very poor psychic? Because, you know, I have seen everything in this field, and I find, you know, it's very easy to tell, for me at least, who is intuitive and who's just playing a game of wannabe intuitive, you know. But for you, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, how much of this is really real, where people are really in tune with what's going on?
Oh, so I don't know that there is any data on how many psychics out there are actually accurate and good at it. It is a sliding scale, so it would be difficult to quantify it without saying, okay, here's where cutoff. If you're this good, you qualify as a psychic, and if you're not that good, you don't qualify. You get what I'm saying here? This is there's a judgment call in there. It's like how good is good enough to be able to call somebody a legitimate psychic. There are organizations that test mediums. The Windbridge Institute tests people, so they have to pass a relatively difficult triple-blind mediumship test in order to qualify for them. But because the test is very hard, there are going to be people who are psychic that can't pass the test. So, what's a good psychic? An accurate one, right? They come to you with accurate information that you can do something with. That's the whole point of going to a psychic in the first place, is they give you information that you can act on.
I think the hard part, though, with social media is it's turned everybody into a card reader and everybody into a psychic. You know, I remember going back about 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm not going to mention the lady's name because she used to be in our chat room, but she used to come into our chat room on a daily basis, and she would ask all of these very simple questions regarding psychic ability. Well, about 5-6 months later, she kind of stopped visiting our chat room, but her and I were Facebook friends. And now she was claiming to be full-on psychic and giving psychic readings during Facebook Live. You know, and that, to me, that's the danger of this, because eventually those type of charlatans start charging money to people. You know, it's scary out there.
Well, you know, the thing with psychics is that professional psychics is it's a completely unregulated field. It's completely unregulated. Anybody at all can hang out a shingle and say, I'm a psychic. And there's no government agency out there that has any authority over them to say whether they can or they can't do this. There's no formal test to take. There's nothing. So for anybody looking for psychic services, you know, word of mouth, man. It's buyer beware out there, and there's nothing to be done about that. Nobody's regulating them.
Buyer beware. That is a good statement for that. Let's go to Bim Jim. What is a psychic? Can you define that, please?
So that's a difficult question. You could ask, you know, what are you going to define when you define a psychic? Is this somebody who does remote viewing? Is it somebody who does psychic healing? Is it somebody who can give you accurate information? And if they can give you accurate information, how much accurate information is enough before you're satisfied that this person is psychic? So these are really difficult questions to ask. Generally, if a person wants to find out if they're personally psychic, I just go through a personality checklist. They're basically highly sensitive people, usually very intuitive. They tend to live a lot in their heads. Typically intuitive, holistically smart. You need to have quite a bit of logical ability to be a good psychic, because you have to be able to sort the noise out from the information that you're receiving. See, you can't tell a psychic information from your own thoughts. There's nothing to differentiate them in your own head. So what you need to be able to do is sort them out. These images or thoughts or whatever that are coming into your mind, you need to be able to sort in between what's noise and what's psychic. So you need a bit of logical ability, but you also need holistic abilities, the ability to visualize well, because if you're going to get an image and you can't visualize, you're pretty much dead in the water in terms of your psychic ability. Or there are some people who hear psychically. They get voices. That's totally a thing. They're very rare, but it does happen. So difficult question, no really straightforward answer to it.
It is a difficult thing to break down because of the clairaudience, clairsentience, the 5 clairs of psychic ability. I don't get it, don't understand it, had it explained to me about 1,000,002 times, but that's just the way it goes. But for a psychic, I mean, what is a good accuracy at being accurate? What is a good percentage?
Better than chance. And that's actually a difficult thing to pull out, too. When they do a triple-blighted test, for example, at the Windbridge Institute, they have to... the person who... There's the medium that's doing the reading, and there's the person receiving the reading. The person receiving the reading, you need to make sure that they don't have a bias when they're grading their own information. This could be a bias in terms of saying, wow, this is super, I agree with that. Or they could have the bias in the other direction and be too hard on the person. So you have to give them, you give them fake tests to find out fake amounts of information to find out whether how they're gonna rate that before you give them the actual one. There's a whole complicated process for sorting that out. It's not something that's easy to explain or really very straightforward.
Okay. So with people who are wanting to take this or learn more about their own psychic ability, how do we judge whether we are spiritually connected enough to take this chance?
Well, you try. I mean, if you can use playing cards if you want, and that, for example, go just by suit. See whether you can pick up whichever suit you're trying for. That's 25% chance. So, see whether you could beat, do better than 25% or by how much. And find out, but you'd have to do a lot of those in order to find out. Testing for psychic ability is not an easy process. It's hard to do by yourself. And I really don't recommend testing for it unless you've got somebody good to help you.
Well, this leads to Nikki's question. Would you want government to regulate psychics? Why or why not?
Well, it depends on what they're regulating and whether the people that you're dealing with. You could easily regulate psychics by simply. I think it's actually a good idea to have regulations. You just say, you don't really have to prove that the person is psychic. They just have to, post a bond, pay a fee, get tracked, so that the government can receive complaints and keep everything in a central database, and you're good to go. I'd be in favor of that. That way, if somebody has a complaint about a psychic, there's some place to go. So, yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
What kind of test would you like to see psychics go through in order to prove their abilities? Is there something that you've sat down with over the years and said, you know what, I think this is an area we have to test on a person's mind or their hearing or their sight? Because let's face it, with psychic intuition, we don't know how it's going to react to us. It reacts differently to every person. Am I correct?
Well, I'm a little leery of tests just because this is a complicated issue, and also there are people with test anxiety. So, you could have people that did really well in sessions, but they couldn't pass a test to save their lives because of test anxiety. If you were going to regulate psychics, the easiest thing to do is just manage by exception. That is to say, if you want to be a licensed psychic, pay the fee, get on the database, and if people complain about you, it's all going to show up. And if you start scamming people, the government's going to come after you. So that'd be a fairly straightforward process, and then people don't have to prove they're psychic except to their clients. And if the clients complain, they're going to be out of business pretty quickly because there's a database that everybody can see.
Follow up from Nikki. How dangerous would a government regulation on psychics be?
Well, not very. I mean, I'm a licensed general building contractor. I'm regulated. I'm doing okay. That doesn't hurt me at all. Being regulated is not that big a deal.
Well, do you think it would clean up the field, though?
Yeah. You'd have a lot of people wash out a lot faster. And you'd have people more hesitant about getting into it. Especially, if people have to pay a fee and get involved with the government, there's going to be fewer people doing it because there's a bit of a risk involved because now you have to instead of just, advertising and then waiting for the money to come in, you actually have to pay a fee. The other side of it is once you're regulated, you're more legitimate. This works in your favor because now you're actually licensed to do what you do. In fact, you could have people required to take some counseling classes or something like that yearly. So you basically improve the field that way too.
Well,
that psychics.
It's a dangerous thing, though. It's a dangerous thing, though. I mean, if we could go down this road for just a moment here, I have seen online, on YouTube, on podcasts, numerous psychics, Craig, who are telling people who are vulnerable at maybe one of their darkest or lowest states that their spouse is cheating on them, or your doctor is going to tell you don't have cancer, but you have cancer, and you got to start taking all of these different types of health. Don't accept their drugs. I mean, we have a lot of this going on online as we speak on a daily basis. This isn't something that is for the light at heart, because there is a lot of people taking advantage of those who are at their lowest points.
That's a good argument for regulation, isn't it?
I would agree with you on that. Yeah.
I mean, those very types of reasons are exactly why my industry is regulated. Because of all this, because if anybody can go out and declare themselves a builder, a lot of people get taken advantage of and end up with dangerous situations in their homes. So it's regulated. I have to renew my license every couple of years. And if people complain, by God, it's going to show up on my license. And if people if people actually go after me, there's a bond that they can collect that I will have to repay. I mean, there are very serious penalties as a contractor for screwing around with people, and that's a good thing. It protects people. So I think having psychics regulated, maybe even having them do a little bit of continuing education every couple of years, that'd be a good thing. Yay!
I would agree with you on that. Too many people are getting ripped off, and I think it's not right. It really is not right. Let's go over to the Parababes here. Are people born with the gift, Craig, or can anyone practice enough to become a psychic?
That's an excellent question. So I would say this. Some people are born with more natural ability that they can develop into more talent or more skill, actually. And some people are born with a lack of those abilities and generally would struggle so much in trying to become psychic that it's not worth the effort for them. Just like, you've got people that are naturals for basketball. You take Kevin Durant, tall, thin guy, athletic, with incredibly long arms. And so when he developed his talent, he had this natural physical build that was perfect for basketball. And when he developed his talent, it was easier for him to reach the top of the game than it would be for other people. Psychic ability is the same way. There are certain traits that some people are going to have in abundance that are favorable to psychic ability, and other people are not going to have them much at all. There are, for example, people that don't have much of an imagination, that bury themselves in logical, linear thinking, and they're not going to do well. No matter how hard they try, they're never going to be excellent at it because their natural personality, they'll be working against their natural personality the entire time. So are all people born with the gift? Yeah, I think so, but some people are going to be far better at it than others. And this has also showed up in testing. There are some people who are way, way better at it than others.
All right, on that note, I'm going to leave it to you right there, Craig Weiler, as we're going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. More questions from our audience about psychic ability, ESP, the Ganzfeld experiment, parapsychology, overall, Spaced Out Radio continues with Craig Weiler right after this. Stay tuned. All right, we're clear. Show's going fast, man.
Yeah, I'm having a good time. This
Good.
is fun.
Good, thank you.
Yeah, I like the questions. They're you never quite know what you're going to get from the audience.
No, our audience is, the one thing I like about our audience is they are very, very knowledgeable. We have an audience that is very, how could you put it? They are very experienced, very knowledgeable, very smart, very educated on these topics. You know, they've allowed their own personal experiences to help guide them, and it's been pretty cool. It's been very cool.
Yeah, it shows up. They're great questions.
Well, wait. Any question that I put up there, I'm just putting it up there as a mark. So that's where we'll start when we come back.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see here. Dan James, thank you for that super chat, Dan. Appreciate that. And he says, I have a very close friend who could see through my eyes anytime she wished, being able to see where I was and what I was doing. Would that be psychic or more waking astral projection? That's a great question. I will ask that shortly to our good friend. Dogface Boy. Love the name, by the way. Love the name. Thank you so much, Dog. I appreciate that. Death metal for all, I would agree. My son and you would get along. He's only 8 years old, and he has been a metalhead since he was about 4. So, you guys would get along.
Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create AI with integrity, not bias. Security that hunts for threats in the wild. Cloud management that requires less management. And new ways for business to do business. Let's create, at scale, right now, together. Let's prototype. Let's tweak. Let's test. Let's adapt. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM. Let's create. Learn more at IBM.com. Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create new possibilities, from intelligent automation to security that hunts for threats in the wild. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM. Let's create. Learn more at IBM.com.
Just perfect. Yeah, he's really into Slipknot right now. So, yeah. Dr. Zed Smith. Am of good behavior. Okay, so you're not on Grandpa's Brute 33 tonight. Good. Good. How you doing, buddy? And thank you for coming on in. Let's see, who else is here? $11. I've unsubscribed. From what? What have you unsubscribed from? The channel? Oh, okay. Up to you. Let's go here. We got a couple of minutes left here.
Okay.
Oh, we got zebras in Namibia, people. We got zebras in Namibia. I did a quick check to see if there were any animals tonight. I'll quickly show you. Zebras! Zebras in Namibia. There they are. Finally, we get some good animals. This channel here, Craig, I watch this every day to relax. This is a man-made watering hole. It's 350 feet down, and the rock covers where the water comes through. And see all sorts of cool animals around here. This is only the second time I've seen the zebras. Very cool. Very cool. The
Yeah.
zebras are back. We'll catch them later, hopefully. Hopefully. There we go. Hold on a second here. Go like that. I just wanted to show you guys the zebras there. And let's see here. Let's see here. All right, we go there. We've got about 45 seconds.
Okay.
I'm going to put a link up in the chat room here for my new channel, Canada's Great Unknown Spooky Story Channel, that if you started by me and Merle, if you want to get in there and have a little listen, we're trying to get it nice and big. If you haven't subscribed, there is the channel right there. You can go hit subscribe to that. We would appreciate that. And here we go, everyone. Thank you to Dogface Dan, Pam, Aiden, Shelley, and Flash for the super chats tonight. We really appreciate it. Thank you to all the veterans who are tuned in. We really appreciate it. As yes, we are live, Gabe, on Twitch. Here we go. We pass the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. Dave Scott here, sitting in SOR headquarters. Want to remind you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire. Check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. We continue on tonight for the final half hour with Craig Weiler. He is someone who has really studied the controversial Ganzfeld experiment that really tests ESP. We got some audience questions here for you, Craig. We're going to continue because the debate earlier was, should psychics and mediums be regulated? And Nikki, of course, who is psychic, is asking, but what about normal business licenses? Would that not cover government?
No, but business licenses are just a tax. That's all they are. You pay the business license tax once a year, and that's all you do. It has nothing to do with regulation.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Let's go to Dan in Australia. I had a very close friend who could see through my eyes any time she wished, being able to see where I was and what I was doing. Would that be psychic or more waking astral projection?
I don't see the difference. Psychic, the term psychic is a catch-all for all these different abilities. So, if you're astral projecting, that's a psychic ability. So, yes, it's psychic. It's also astral projection, and it's psychic, astral projection. Same thing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so, I agree that psychics, if they're going into business, or if they're going to be running around on social media doing readings, that's where I do believe they need to be regulated. But the average person who is connected, I don't think they need to be regulated. Do you?
If you're not charging money, no. No, there's no point in regulating people who are not charging money. Once you start selling your services, then I think regulation would be a good thing.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. I am very much. I mean, if it stops people from getting ripped off, and let's face it, every few months we hear of a brand new story somewhere in the world where a family was taken advantage of for thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars sometimes, because of a psychic who was trying to get rid of an evil curse or spirit and needed money in order to do so. You know, I mean, if you're given a God-given talent, shouldn't you use that God-given talent for what it is worth? Then again, I guess we could say that about priests and reverends and everybody like that.
So just to be clear on how regulation works, regulation won't stop people from getting cheated. What it does is it gives them an official and very clear course of action that they can take after they've been cheated. In construction, people get cheated still, despite the fact that there's regulation. The cheating still happens. People still get ripped off. So regulation doesn't stop that, but it does give people an avenue to first check people out before they actually, take on this, decide to pay for the services. And regulation also gives you an avenue of complaint so that you have somewhere to go if you have been ripped off. Now, if you have people charging tens of thousands of dollars, that's no longer, you're not really in the psychic realm anymore. That's just fraud. That's not really, it's a fraudster with a psychic mask on. They could be doing anything, but it's a fraudster. It's not a psychic.
Let me ask you this. I mean, you've been around enough psychics and written about enough stories over the years. Is there a favorite story that you have followed and you look at it and you're kind of like, wow, I can't believe that happened?
Yes, there is one. And it revolves around another experiment. Daryl Bem did a precognition experiment. I think it was in 2012 or something. And so you have to understand, with parapsychology, skeptics are always complaining, well, the journal wasn't good enough. The experiment wasn't good enough. There were problems here. And what he did was he had an experiment, a precognition experiment, that basically ticked all the boxes. It was published in a really high-value science journal, very well-respected, and the experiments were basically bulletproof. It was an ordinary psychology experiment where they just flipped a couple parameters and turned it into a parapsychology experiment. So there was really nothing to complain about, and he did all the things that you needed to do in order for the study to be considered of the highest value. So you had this parapsychology experiment demonstrating precognition that was as perfect as you could hope for as a scientific experiment. That's the beginning of the story. From here, it gets absolutely nuts, because first of all, the skeptics absolutely went batshit crazy over this. The first thing that happened was a couple of skeptics, Richard Weissman and Chris French, who occasionally do parapsychology experiments but have never successfully done any of them. They've never had an experiment be successful, ever, as far as I know. So they did experiments that were, they replicated Bem's experiments, and they did 3 separate studies and failed. Well, the 3 separate studies were the size of Bem's single study. They just wanted to make it sound worse than it actually was. And so all this got published. Oh, there were failed replications. Well, later Bem published his replications. He'd done 90 of them. And so this experiment was indeed successful. Despite the fact that there were some failed replications, that's actually normal for statistical studies. Mm-hmm. So what did the skeptics do? Well, first of all, there's one Wagenmaker. He did a Bayesian analysis where his prior probability, that is the probability that psychic ability exists, was like 0 or 0, 29 zeros, and then a 1. So psychic ability basically to him was completely impossible. And by setting the number that low, of course, the experiment was going to fail. And his argument was that if this experiment succeeded, then since psychic ability couldn't possibly exist, that all of psychology must be broken. Because if this experiment succeeded, that meant that the entire scientific method that they're using in psychology must be flawed. So in other words, to put this in simple terms, they were going to throw out the entire field of psychology to make one positive result go away. This was one of the skeptic things that they did. And they still have not let go of that one. And there are some other things, but it's like they've gone nuts with this experiment. They can't use the ordinary channels, and so they're trying desperately to come up with just weird, unconventional ways to say that psychic ability can't possibly exist. They have a very deep emotional issue about accepting it.
Why is there such an anger towards topics like this, or studying any topic like this? Mainstream scientists seem to get very angry about it.
I've noticed that anger. In fact, that's one of the tells that I'm dealing with a skeptic that's probably not going to be rational is this anger. My initial impression is they know they're wrong somewhere deep down. And this is their emotional response to it. That they have to be angry about it and dismissive, because any other approach is listening, actually considering that this might be true.
Right. Like I did a show on the Mandela effect the other night, and people get so angry about some of these topics. Like it is fierce and vile. We're going to never listen to your channel again, and this is a garbage conversation. Why would you waste my time over things like this? We see it all the time. I don't understand the complete anger that people have for a different type of subjective thinking.
I agree. I've sometimes discussed other controversial topics with people, and the anger comes right up. They're the only avenue they have is to attack you, to turn into something personal, because being wrong is simply something that's emotionally not acceptable to them. Mm-hmm. It's simply they can't deal with it. Literally can't deal with being wrong.
Like, I don't mind skepticism, but this goes way far beyond that, don't you think?
It does. It goes way beyond it. Well, normal skepticism is weighing both sides, right? You're looking at the evidence from both sides, and then you're not going to accept a conclusion until you have what you consider to be sufficient evidence. That's skepticism, and there's no problem with that at all. But what you see with this kind of stuff where these people are getting angry is they're weighting their sources 100%, and they're weighting your sources 0%. And there's no getting past that. So everybody that they agree with is 100% right, and everybody you agree with is 100% wrong. There's no way around that in an argument. You can't come up with a good discussion because they're simply not listening.
Mm-hmm. No, I could say that. And I like Jenny's comment here. She says, Dave, it's fear. Because the scientific community thinks that even though there's millions upon millions of questions that still need to be answered, they have drawn perimeters on what science is now. And Dr. Bob McGuire, who is a good friend of this show, he used to be a part of the science and mathematics team in Virginia Tech University until he retired recently. And the one thing that's disappointed him after 50 plus years of science is the narrow-mindedness that scientists are having today, where they should be opening up their minds to everything from ESP to telepathy to Sasquatch to ET contact. I mean, it's all right if they don't exist. It's all right by using experimentation and study in order to prove that they don't. Because right now we don't know either.
Well, exactly. And you encounter this all over the place. Mitch Horowitz gave, he's a journalist that advocates for parapsychology occasionally, and likes to talk about the occult. He's written for the New York Times, but when they published a hit piece on, I think it was Daryl Bem's research, because people were just going after him because he did a very good job. He wrote he tried to do a response to that, and they ignored him. So the positive versions just get shut out. So I'm seeing a question here. What do I think of James? What do I think of the late James Randi?
Yes.
Great showman, terrible at psychic things. His challenge was based upon really, really faulty experiments to demonstrate psychic ability. It was basically the worst challenges possible. If you could design something to make sure that people failed, that was what he did. So nobody passed this test because he designed them that way.
Why do you think he had? I mean, let's talk about anger. Why did you think James Randi had such an anger for people who claim to have abilities?
From what I could see of Randi, this is pure speculation on my part. For him, he appeared to be somebody who kind of almost sociopathic tendencies of being grandiose, and the skeptic crowd looked upon him very favorably because he was telling them things that they wanted to hear. So his fame came from his skepticism. Although he was a very accomplished magician, as I understand, that's not, all of his money was coming from the skeptics. He created an organization to suck money out of them, and he took some, like $200,000 a year from it. In exchange, he created a super cheapo challenge for psychics that he could use as a publicity stunt. And so, part of this was his living. This is how he made his money.
But, okay, look, I think he did a good thing in trying to expose a lot of people. There is,
I know some people feel that, but you have to understand, he wasn't really exposing very many people, and because of his tactics and his lack of empathy and concern, he was throwing everybody under the bus. It's like there might be 3 people there that were legitimate frauds, but he threw 30 people under the bus with them. So, that's not really a good track record there.
No, very true. Very, very true. We got about 6.5 minutes left with you tonight, and okay. Craig Weiler is with us here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's see in the audience here if we got some more questions for you regarding anything psychic or anything to do with abilities. And Evan wants to know, what is your opinion then of Uri Geller?
That's a good one. So Uri Geller, it's my understanding, based upon some of the research I've done, that he did pass some tests for psychic ability way back in the day. So he's apparently legitimately psychic. He's also what's described as a trickster, which means that not everything he does is probably psychic, and it's hard to differentiate sometimes between what is the trickster part and what is actually psychic. He has this in common with a lot of physical medium.
Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create AI with integrity, not bias. Security that hunts for threats in the wild. Cloud management that requires less management. And new ways for business to do business. Let's create, at scale, right now, together. Let's prototype, let's tweak, let's test, let's adapt. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM. Let's create. Learn more at IBM.com. Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create new possibilities, from intelligent automation to security that hunts for threats in the wild. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM. Let's create. Learn more at IBM.com.
And this has been an issue with physical media research throughout history, is you run into a lot of people that are tricksters, which is to say they're partially psychic, and sometimes they have some really extraordinary psychic phenomena, but this is wrapped up in a little bit of fakery and showmanship. And sometimes it's hard to get the two separated so that you can see what's real.
Okay. So when you get somebody like Uri Geller, who is claiming to bend spoons and everything, but has been, by some proven to be a hoax, I mean, where do we find the balance on this?
Well, I have a bit of trouble with the people who are claiming it a hoax, and part of that issue is my long history with parapsychology, skepticism, and skepticism of psychics is that the skeptics are unreliable narrators. They can't be trusted to be objective. And so when they're claiming, oh, we've proved he's not, we've proved he's faking it and whatnot, you can't take them at face value. And you have to find out, well, what did they really discover? And oftentimes what you have is they say, well, we've been able to duplicate something that was like that. And so because we were able to duplicate something sort of like what he was doing, then he must have been doing that. And that's the assumption they're making. That assumption might not be true. He might be legitimately bending spoons. But because they've come up with something that's plausible, then that must be the truth. And that's how they sell that. So when you're dealing with people that claim that he's not legitimate, you have to treat that with skepticism as well.
Well, that's where it gets interesting.
That is absolutely where it gets interesting.
All right, 3.5 minutes to go before we got to say goodnight to Craig here. And Samantha says, sometimes there are no real answers, I guess. We just need to learn to accept things sometimes?
Yeah, with psychic ability, there is some ambiguity. There are, for example, situations where you don't know whether you came up with something sort of logically or whether it was a psychic, something psychic that came to you. This sometimes happens for doctors, for example, just using an example where they will see somebody and get a list of symptoms and then come up with a correct diagnosis because they felt like this was it. They may not say it was psychic, excuse me. However, the symptoms might have had like 30 other different potential causes, but they knew which one it was. So was it their skill or was it their psychic ability? You never really know.
Gloria would like to know, she says, I saw a video of a woman being healed from a tumor by chanting. Do you think this is possible?
I've heard of sound being used in healing, but anytime you see a video of something, you got to stay skeptical. You can't trust videos. It's too easy to fake.
I would agree with you on that. Very much agree with you on that. Craig, it's been an absolute pleasure to get you back on Spaced Out Radio. to talk about all of this. Ganzfeld experiment, ESP, what's going on in the field, because there is always so much that we are being bombarded by, that to have somebody that like you who can come in and sort it out for us, we really do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Do me a favor, take the next 90 seconds, tell everybody where they can find your work and more understanding of what the Ganzfeld experiment is.
Regarding the Ganzfeld, I have an article out on Paranormal Daily News, which you can find easily by searching. So I do some writing for them. You can find several articles of mine on Paranormal Daily News. I'm also on Twitter, Craig Weiler. It's fairly easy to find there too. And I've done some writing on Quora. I manage a I manage a parapsychology space on Quora, where I post some parapsychology related information there too. And I also have a book, Psy Wars, TED, Wikipedia, and the Battle for the Internet. And there I go into a great deal of depth on the conflict between skeptics and parapsychology, and how exactly the mechanism for why this all occurs.
That is awesome. I want to say a big thank you again, Craig, for coming on Spaced Out Radio. Absolute pleasure to have you here and to have you break it all down for us. Good luck in your research as well.
Thank you very much, Dave. It's been a real honor to be on your show. I really enjoyed it tonight. Thank you very, very much.
Appreciate that. Craig Weiler, everybody. Coming up next, we have Swamp Dweller with another amazing story. Super Duke with the Cryptid Report, and it's Dave 101 night. We'll be back on Spaced Out Radio right after this at Hour 3. Great show, Craig. Great show.
Well, thank you, Dave. I had a wonderful time. Thank you very much for having me.
Appreciate it. We'll let you go here, and we'll do it again, man. We promise. We will.
All right. Thank you very much.
Take care. Good night. Craig Weiler, everybody, as we bring in Super Duke from World Bigfoot Radio. And we're glad to have you here, Super Duke.
Howdy, everybody. Hope you're all doing good tonight.
I'm going to fill up my water again. I'm dying of thirst after pounding back that pizza, so I'll be right back.
My psychic prediction is Dave will gain 1.5 pounds by morning, based on him eating an entire pizza and drinking lots of water. I got the chat room up so I can see what you guys are typing. Howdy, everybody. Hey, Steve. Hey, Dee. Jenny L. Menial Scientist. Evan. Everything likes pizza. Even horses eat pizza. Julie. Angels, how you doing? Yeah, Ivan T. Sanderson, that's the man. He would look into anything, and it drove people absolutely nuts that he would do that. The latest on it, Tony, is that nobody has wanted to pay the big whopping price to buy it, so it's sitting in limbo until somebody with a pile of money comes along or they drop the asking price. Hey, Black Dragon. Dave's taking a while. I hope he doesn't get mugged by that obnoxious El Omni Volador guy or something. Yes, Kara, this is my coffee mug. Let's get over here. You guys can see it. Ooh, coffee. Since I'm going to probably be up all night editing anyway. Yeah, Art Bell stuff is classic, Evan. He's got some great shows. A bunch of those you listen to 20 times, and they're still fun to listen to. Bama! Bam, I wish I had your help tonight. Guess what I found in episode 122? Yeah, there's more of them. I was going through putting together a best of episode, and yep, zoomed right in on another little one laying on the ground. You can see both of his eyes, and there's another larger one to his right, and there's an even bigger one to his left behind a big tree trunk that he's laying down next to. But it's so far out of focus at that point, you can't make out anything. But you can sure see his face and his little eyes.
How's it going, Super Duke?
Doing good, bud.
I'm starting to feel like shit after pounding that pizza. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I just gave my psychic prediction that you're going to gain 1.5 pounds by morning.
Oh, no, I gained about a little bit more than that tonight. How stupid could I be? Absolutely blew my diet tonight.
Yeah, that's no big deal as long as you don't do it every night.
Oh, I feel like crap right now.
Yeah, that'll remind you to not do that again.
Yeah. It seemed like
Body's
such
not
a good
used to
idea.
eating that much pizza all at one time anymore.
God, it seemed like such a good idea at the time. Oh. I'm on my third glass of water, and actually, that's about 6 glasses because I got this filled.
Pizza coma.
Oh, my God. It's terrible. How stupid could I be? Hi, lovely Lavira. How you doing? Good old Sir Duke. Yeah, good old Super Duke. Big thank you tonight to Dogface, Dan, Pam, Aiden, Shelley, and Flash Forward for the amazing super chats. We really do appreciate the love and support on this show, so thank you so much for everything that you guys do. Yes, I have a carb overload right now. I feel disgusting, but we're going to go through. We must battle here. Here we go.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. We very much appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hi to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do us the favor, hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Foyer. Foyer is your password. Use it wisely, space travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. It is time once again where we head into the swamp. Our resident swamp dweller taking us on another spooky story tour.
Hi, Spaced Out Radio listeners. This is Swamp Dweller. It's time for your nightly dose of spookiness on the show. If you have an interesting encounter or a spooky story that you would like to share, be sure to submit them in at swampdweller.net. You can also find our YouTube channel at youtube.com/swampdwellerreads. Now, let's chill out, relax, and together, let's enter the swamp. This one started out as a regular night. 3 of my friends and I went out into this Adirondack mountain shelter that we called the Addy. It was maybe about 500 feet into the wood lot at the edge of our dorm parking lot. It is basically a small lean-to shelter built out of logs with a metal roof and an open front. It is a spot we had been going to almost every single night for several years to smoke weed before bed, and sometimes even during the daytime. Occasionally, we would see some strange things that we could not quite explain, like random lights off in the distance of varying colors disappearing and reappearing in no consistent pattern. The woods were several acres deep in that direction, and it was a rural area with family-owned agricultural fields, at some point past the forest. You could walk for probably 30 minutes in that direction and still not be out of the woods. This night, we saw the same lights, and they often are accompanied by an uneasy feeling, like there's static in the air. Granted, I know every time we saw these things we were smoking, but I don't really get all that paranoid when I smoke. But I digress. It was a trend, and I was not the only one noticing them. Anyway, this one night, all of us were feeling uneasy and hyper-aware of our surroundings, trying to finish up our bowl and go back to the dorm. Then, suddenly out of nowhere, there was a huge crash on top of the metal roof of our Addy. All 4 of us happened to be sitting in a small circle inside the corner of the shelter of the floor. We all were getting terrified and grabbed each other, ducking as close as we could to the floor, expecting the shelter's roof to collapse in on us. It felt like a huge tree fell on top of the shelter. A moment later, when the shelter had held strong, we all shakily looked around. We all quickly decided to get up and get back to the dorm as quickly as we could. It was night, so we could not see very well. So, we were leaving, but all our hearts were racing, and we were too shaken up to stay and investigate. The next day, we went out during the daytime to see if we could investigate and see what happened. We looked to see if there was a tree that fell, and there were no downed trees around the Addy, and no fallen branches large enough to make the sound that we heard. That was something terrifying to discover. I tried doing some research to see if anything weird happened out in those woods or in that area of the Adirondack Mountains. Previously, as I have stated, I have had several unexplainable experiences there throughout the years. I found out that there is an old fort about 15 to 20 miles away from where we are, and there's a big ambush involving Native Americans way back during the French and Indian War, where many Native Americans and French died. I always wondered if any of the paranormal experiences in those woods were related to the Native American spirits that previously called those woods their home. I'll never know for sure, but it is an interesting thing to think about, and something I'll never forget. This happened to me and a close friend. We are both 23-year-old males. This happened just last month. We decided to go on a 2-night backpacking and camping trip in the Adirondack Mountains of New York. We are both extremely comfortable with nature and spend a lot of time camping, hunting, fishing, etc. We hiked about 5 miles into a small lake and set up camp on a small beach. This was not a heavily trafficked area, and we did not expect to see or to run into anybody else. Our first night there was just us sitting around the fire. We saw a flashlight moving on the other side of the lake at around 10:30. This was unusual. However, we did not think too terribly much of it at the time. But as time went on, this flashlight kept moving around the lake, getting closer to our campsite. We kept discussing who could possibly be wandering around the woods in the middle of the night, and we did not particularly want an unwelcomed guest. Once it was clear that the person, or people, was heading for our campsite, we moved off into the woods nearby to see who wandered up. I took a small axe with me, and my friend had a .22 rifle. Now, we were not expecting trouble, and we certainly did not want to make any. but we figured we might as well cover our bases. Now, the moment of truth. The flashlight comes near the light of our fire, and it is just one lone man. He has a beard and is probably in his mid-40s or so. The scary part is what he was carrying. It turned out to be a pump-action shotgun. He walked around the campsite a few times and then proceeded to enter our tent. After rummaging around for a minute or so, he came out and started yelling.
I know you're out there. Why don't you come and say hello?
My friend and I remained motionless under a hemlock tree about 50 yards away. That is when the man proceeded to fire his shotgun into the woods, not too far from where we were sitting. He also swung his flashlight around several times. After what felt like hours, he grabbed my friend's backpack and a few articles of clothing we had drying off near the fire and threw them in to burn. My friend, who had his .22 trained on the man the entire time, asked me if I should shoot. I told him not unless he spots us and starts to point the gun in our direction. Thankfully, the man moved off from where he had come after a little while. We waited until his flashlight was on the other side of the lake, ran out, grabbed everything we could fit in my backpack and took off. It was now around 2 or 3 a.m. at this point. We ran out the trail with flashlights and made it back to our car as the sun was coming up. We immediately went to the police department and reported it, where we also spoke to some forest rangers. That was it really. I have not heard anything back from the police. It was not mysterious, however, it creeped the absolute hell out of us.
Oh, man. Can you imagine camping in the middle of the night, Super Duke, and you hear some noise, and all of a sudden a dude walks up on you with a shotgun? That would not be fun.
Oh, yeah, I can picture that. I camp in places like that. I camp in Montana.
Yeah, I mean, you may have the Sasquatch up there that have the shotguns as well. So, I don't know. All right, Super Duke's here. Cryptid Report coming up right now. All right, Super Duke from World Bigfoot Radio on YouTube. Make sure you head on over to World Bigfoot Radio, hit that subscribe button, Duke, and I would really appreciate it.
Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create AI with integrity, not bias. Security that hunts for threats in the wild. Cloud management that requires less management. And new ways for business to do business. Let's create, at scale, right now, together. Let's prototype, let's tweak, let's test, let's adapt. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM. Let's create. Learn more at IBM.com. Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create AI with integrity, not bias. Security that hunts for threats in the wild. Cloud management that requires less management. And new ways for business to do business. Let's create, at scale, right now, together. Let's prototype, let's tweak, let's test, let's adapt. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM. Let's create. Learn more at IBM.com.
And Duke always comes in with another historic cryptid report. And where are we going this time, Duke?
Oh, we're going to actually hit some old native legends. And before I get to that, I remind everybody that you had a cameo in the last show I put out.
Oh, did I?
129 Part 1. It was the same cameo you had in the previous one, but this was in the context of this was for the expedition, whereupon we were sitting around watching you and talking to you in chat, and you came on and gave us the rah-rah team, and we filmed it. And then this is the expedition that happened the next day and the following day and the day after that.
Very cool.
So,
thank you.
Yeah, everybody that saw Part 1 really enjoyed it, and they enjoyed the fact that you're rah-rahing and cheering us on that we don't get killed or otherwise molested by Sasquatch. So I appreciate that too, Dave.
Well, you know what? Remember, you don't ever want to get molested by a Sasquatch unless, Duke, you ask for it.
Yeah, well, that ain't going to happen on my side.
Oh, come on, Duke. A nice 8-foot female, gives you the old pouty lips and flashes her big eyelashes at you.
Just no. Speaking of females, I was one of the pieces of video I was going over because part of what we did on that expedition was go and shoot comparison video where we had actually filmed suspects before. So I'm back there at the same place. Okay, here's that X structure. You zoom in past it, and what's there? There's nothing there. When I was here last time and filmed, there was something there. It looked like a young female Sasquatch. She ain't there now. So I'm digging out this piece of video, and I'm going through it, and I'm going, what in the F is that? I zoom in on something. It's laying on the ground next to a tree. And yeah, it's a little one. You can see his face. You can see his eyes. His eyes blink. And I'm looking more carefully at it, and I'm like, the damn camera kept trying to focus in on this branch, autofocus in front of him instead of the actual objects I'm trying to get. So he's not in perfect focus. You can see him really good. But there's at least 2 or 3 around him that are a little bit further back that are just, you're never going to be able to make them out with the quality of video I got. But again, very disturbing. You go back and you look at your old video and you're like, oh, there's another one that I totally missed. How many of them were around me watching me? But anyway, let's get to the reports. These are from Giants, Cannibals, and Monsters, most excellent book by Kathy Muscovitz-Strain. And Kathy actually works with a whole bunch of the native tribes documenting things that they consider to be extraordinarily important anthropologically and culturally, old ruins or something like that, and make sure that the Park Service knows about them so they don't get wrecked up by people. And in the process of doing that, she was gathering reports from all these different tribes of their name for Bigfoot, legends about it, stories about it from their perspective, and 2 of them in here that are really interesting. Oh, and before I get on this and forget it, in the back she's got a actual dictionary of all the Indian tribes that she was talking to and what they told her their name for Bigfoot is. And it's fairly exhaustive, so it's worth having the book just for that. But the first one we got here is the Sitka, and the source of this is Life Among the Paiutes, Their Wrongs and Claims by Sarah Winnemucca. And there's a bunch of you will probably know that name will ring a bell. She ain't talking about Bigfoot here. She's talking about the red-headed giants. Among the traditions of our people is one of the small tribe of barbarians who used to live along the Humboldt River. It was many hundreds of years ago. They used to waylay my people and kill and eat them. They would dig large holes in our trails, and at night, if any of our people traveled at night, which they did, they were still afraid of these barbarous people, but they would oftentimes fall into these holes. That tribe would even eat their own dead. Yes, they would even come and dig up our dead after they were buried and would carry them off and eat them. Now and then they would come and make war on my people. They would fight, and as fast as they killed one another on either side, the women would carry off those who were killed. My people say they were very brave. When they were fighting, they would jump up in the air after the arrows that went over their heads and shoot them back. My people took some of them into the families, but could not make them like themselves. So at last, they made war on them. This war lasted a long time. Their number was about 2,600. The war lasted 3 years. My people killed them in great numbers, and what few were left went into the thick bush. My people set the bush on fire. This was right above Humboldt Lake. Then they went to work and made tule or bulrush boats and went into Humboldt Lake. They could not live there very long without fire. They were nearly starving. My people were watching them all around the lake and would kill them as fast as they would come on land. At last, one night, they all landed on the east side of the lake and went into the cave near the mountains. It was the most horrible place, for my people watched at the mouth of the cave and would kill them as they came out to get water. My people would ask them if they would be like us and not eat people like coyotes or beasts do. We talked the same language, but they would not give it up. At last, my people were tired, and they went to work and gathered wood and began to fill up the mouth of the cave. Then the poor fools began to pull the wood inside till the cave was full. At last, my people set it on fire. At the same time, they cried out to them, "Will you give up and be like men and not eat people like beasts? Say quick, we will put out the fire." No answer came from them. My people said they thought the cave must be very deep or far into the mountains. They had never seen the cave nor known it was there until then. They called out to them as loud as they could, "Will you give up? Say so. You will all die." But no answer came. Then they all left the place. In 10 days, some went back to see if the fire had gone out. They went back to my third or fifth great-grandfather and told him they must all be dead. There was such a horrible smell. This tribe were called people eaters, and after my people had killed them all, the people around us called us Sedukara. It means conqueror, and it also means enemy. I do not know how we came by the name of Paiutes. It is not an Indian word. I think it is misinterpreted. Sometimes we are called pine nut eaters, for we are the only tribe that lives in the country where pine nuts grow. My people say the tribe we exterminated had reddish hair, red-haired giants. I have some of their hair, which has been handed down from father to son. I have a dress which has been in our family a great many years, trimmed with this reddish hair. I'm going to wear it at some time when I lecture. It's called the morning dress, and no one has such a dress in my family. It should also be noted that this cave is well known, been documented. There's an interpretive center next to it. They spirited away all pertinent data, except for they missed the greasy giant's handprint on the ceiling of the cave that a Bigfoot researcher got a picture of about 10 years ago with a big Bowie knife next to it for scale. Or apparently one of them was reaching up on the roof of the cave while the fire was going on. So now we go to up in Oregon, the Modoc tribe. And what they are talking about here is, in fact, Bigfoot. And the source here is encounters with the Matakagmi. Many Smokes, National American Indian Magazine, fourth quarter, 1968. One of the things that interests me very greatly on this is that name, Matakagmi. In Tibet, the Yeti's actual name is Meto Kangmi.
Oh, weird.
Here's the story. Grandfather was walking along a deer trail near a lake just about dusk when he saw up ahead something that looked like a tall bush. Upon coming a little closer, he became aware of a strong odor, sort of musky. He then gave a close look at the bush and suddenly realized it was not a bush at all, for it was covered from head to foot with thick, coarse hair, much like horsehair. He took a step closer, but the creature made a sound that sounded like, "Nyah!" Grandfather now knew that this was one of the old ones that they spoke about, a Sasquatch. Although it was growing darker, Grandfather was able to see quite clearly two soft brown eyes through the hairy head part. Then the creature moved slightly, and Grandfather made a motion of friendship and laid down the string of fish that he had been carrying. The creature evidently understood this, as it quickly snatched up the fish and struck out through the timber nearby. It stopped only for a moment and made a sound that my grandfather never forgot, a long, low. Grandfather called them people. He referred to them as people called Matakagmi. It was only a few weeks after his encounter with the Matakagmi that he was awakened one morning by strange noises outside his cabin. Upon investigating, he found a stack of deer skins, fresh and ready for tanning. Off in the distance, he heard that strange sound once again. After this, there were other items left from time to time, such as wood for fuel and wild berries and fruits. It was a few years later that Grandfather had his second but far more amazing contact with the Sasquatch. A timber rattler had struck him in the leg while guiding men searching for gold. He had been ahead of the group and was therefore alone when it happened. Grandfather killed the snake and started to come back down, but then passed out. As best he can remember, he became sick to his stomach. When he came around again, he thought he was dreaming, for three large Sasquatch, about 8 to 10 foot tall, surrounded him. He noted that they had made a small cut on the snake bite and then somehow removed some of the venom and placed cool moss on the bite. Then one of the Matakagmi made a kind of grunting sound, and the two lifted him up and took him down a trail that he did not know. Finally, after some little descent down the mountainside, they placed him under a low, brushy tree, and they left. Again, Grandfather heard that mournful cry of the Sasquatch. After a while, he began to feel better and then took his .44 caliber cap and ball pistol and fired some shots in the air. Finally, the gold party found him. Grandfather said nothing about what happened concerning the Sasquatch. He was taken back to where the pack mules were tied and then onto the nearest little town where he rested for a few days and then returned to Tule Lake. Grandfather told only his immediate family about this encounter, and after this would never take anyone for any amount of money to Mount Shasta region. He would only say, "Matakagmi live, that holy place. I have friends there." For many years in the still of the evening or sometimes late at night, he would still hear the sound that he knew was them, the call of the Sasquatch. Grandfather went on to relate that the Matakagmi were not vicious, but were very shy, especially of the white man, and they generally only came out in the evenings and at night. They lived chiefly on roots they dug and berries, and only ate meat in the bitterest of cold weather. Their homes are in deep mountainside burrows unknown to man. Wow. There's your two native tales for the night, giants and Bigfoot.
My goodness. My goodness. You know what? I mean, they're two totally different tales. One basically says they're man-eaters. The other one, they're there to help a guy who gets bitten by a rattlesnake.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point I wanted to make here, because they're all this stuff is getting lumped into, oh, it's all Bigfoot. No, it isn't. Those red-haired giants were giants. They have their giant shoes that they pulled out of the cave. Bigfoot doesn't wear shoes. Bigfoot doesn't make duck decoys. They don't have tools. All this stuff that they pulled out of the cave where these guys had been barbecued was of giant size and the type of stuff humans make. Bigfoot doesn't do that. Their red-haired giant enemies were giants.
Weird. Very weird. What's your take on this? You think Bigfoot is the, rattlesnake poison sucking out of the leg kind of guy? Or do you think that it's a little bit more ominous than what we're led to believe?
That's not the only story I've heard of Sasquatch helping people. Bob Garrett down in Texas, when he was out prospecting, he got in a similar situation where he was out by himself and he got hurt. And he was super sick, and it was about 20 miles out to get out again. He was by himself. He started trying to make the trek out, and somewhere along the way, he passed out. And when he woke up, there was a Sasquatch there putting him down at a trailhead. And this was the same one that had been hanging around his camp for about 6 months and being friendly and non-aggressive, and left him food a couple times, and he left it food a couple times. So when I guess it perceived that he was going to die, it decided to help him out and hauled him out to a trail where humans could find him. This also makes you wonder about some of these reports of the little missing children that are too small to really explain what happened. And the area that they disappeared in has been searched over and over and over again. And all of a sudden they show up in the area again. How's that possible? Somebody brought them back and put them back there. It's the only way it could happen.
Only way, dude.
Search team people aren't idiots, If there was a little kid, they would pretty much easily be able to find them.
Oh, I hear you. I totally hear you, my friend. 30 seconds left. Let everybody know where they can find World Bigfoot Radio.
You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on BitChute, Bright Eon, Odyssey, and Rumble. And you can also find my social media groups on MeWe, it's World Bigfoot Central, and on Facebook, it's Montana Bigfoot Project.
Duke, always a pleasure to have you on Spaced Out Radio. We'll talk to you next week, my friend. And
take care, everybody.
And of course, don't let the Wookiees bite you.
Nope. Don't hug the Wookiees.
Never. Never. Coming up next, it's Dave 101. Canada's finally in the UFO game. What does this mean? We'll be back right after this on Spaced Out Radio. John Music has a question for you. What do you think about all the children found returned dead face down in water in the same spot that was already searched over 100 times?
Yeah, same thing. It makes you wonder what happened. They were obviously killed somewhere else, and then the body was left there. Most of the times when these kids disappear, they just never find them. And then you've got the dramatically redacted magic bear over in, where was it, in the Carolinas, where the kid disappeared for 3 days, and it was like in the 30s and raining. And then like 3 days later, they found him. He's perfectly fine. He said a bear took care of him.
Yeah, teddy bear. Right. A teddy bear.
Yeah, magic teddy bear. It was Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh actually lives over there. Now we know where he's at. Because an actual bear in the winter is not going to take care of a kid. No.
Nope. And it's funny that people use that argument. You can tell anybody who uses that argument that a bear in the middle of winter waking up they're angry, they're pissed off, and they are extremely hungry.
Yeah.
Extremely.
There's only two reasons that a bear wakes up during the winter other than being messed with by something. One of them is because they have to void their balls, and the other one is because they're hungry and they want a snack. Mm-hmm. Other than that, they don't wander around during the winter.
Yeah.
So, not going to be bringing a kid back to the cave and feeding him berries and keeping him out of the rain and bringing him back and dropping him off where the humans can find him again.
In a briar patch or a briar patch that had already been searched 5 times.
Yeah. And it was extremely close to where the kid had wandered off initially, too. Keeping that in mind.
Evan,
it was like 100 feet from where he disappeared.
Evan is wondering if you've ever seen Thinker Thunker.
Oh, God, yeah. Thinker Thunker's the man. He hardly ever makes a bad call. He's really accurate.
I don't know the Summer Wells case. Pam, I'm sorry. What do you say about small children taken out of locked houses and cars with no tracks or any scientifically plausible explanations?
I have no idea what's doing that, but it ain't Sasquatch. They're taking out of locked vehicles and the door's still on it.
Mm-hmm.
They got big fumbly fingers, and, they're going to open the door. They'll just rip it right off if they can't get in.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
We had the report of a ranger that was saved from a fire over here a little bit to the west of me and had been trying to get away from it. He was in a big open field and got too much smoke and passed out. And then when he woke up, he wasn't in his truck. He was laying in the woods somewhere. And he heard people's voices, and he got up and started walking to them. And he was only about 40 or 50 feet in the woods, and he came out in the clearing, and there was two more rangers with their trucks there, had a blockade to keep people from going further up the mountain where the fire was going on. And they were relieved to see him because they had been wondering where he went to. And he told them he didn't know how he got there, but he surmised his truck was further up the road from where they were. So he jumped in the truck with one of them, and they went up to find his truck. And when they got up there, sure enough, his truck was sitting there. It had been out in the field. It had kind of like low grass through it, so it had been very minimal fire damage to the truck. It had just been all smoke going through it that had knocked him out. The only damage to the truck was that the roof was peeled back like a sardine tin. Because whatever took him out of the truck apparently didn't know how to open a door. So it just peeled the roof off.
Wow.
He was a little surprised and kind of alarmed, and so was the guy that was with him.
All right, Super Duke, I got to get ready here. So we'll call it the night unless you want to hang out in the background.
Nah, I got to get going. Like I said, now that I found that more video, I've got to go do a breakdown on it. Damn it.
Nice.
Oh, well, it's a needful thing. That'll be out next week. You can see me catch another one on camera and him trying to duck down and blinking.
Go have fun editing, buddy.
I will. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, everybody. Have a great night.
Talk to you next week, bud. Super Duke, Spaced Out Radio's own Dookie Poo right there. Dookie Poo. I went there. I went there. All right, 20 seconds. Big thank you to Flash Forward, Shelly, Aiden, Pam, Dan, and Dogface for the awesome super chats. Really appreciate everyone. Here we go in about 10 seconds. We rounded third. We're heading for home tonight on Spaced Out Radio. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Dave Scott. Appreciate each and everything that you guys do for us on each and every night here while we're on the air with you. Want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on TalkStream Live, Revolution Radio, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do us the favor, hit that subscribe button. Yep, our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read Shirky Poo's Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. It is time once again where I decide I got to give my opinion on something. Yeah, let's do it. It's Dave 101.
It's time for Dave 101.
Well, yesterday we actually found out that our good friend in Ottawa, Member of Parliament Larry Maguire, who's from the province of Manitoba.
With bills to pay and debt piling up, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. Personal loans through NetCredit can provide funding up to $10,000 to help you get back on track financially if eligible. Our secure application process allows you to customize the terms that work for you and your budget. So check your eligibility today without affecting your credit score and help get your finances back on track. NetCredit, a more personal loan. All NetCredit loans and lines of credit are offered by a member of the NetCredit family of companies or one of our lending partners. Visit netcredit.com/partners for more information.
Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create AI with integrity, not bias. Security that hunts for threats in the wild. Cloud management that requires less management. And new ways for business to do business. Let's create, at scale, right now, together. Let's prototype. Let's tweak. Let's test. Let's adapt. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM. Let's create. Learn more at IBM.com.
Actually decided to ask about UFOs on camera during a committee meeting on natural resources. His question was to the deputy minister, a gentleman by the name of John Hannaford, basically saying, we have had reports of 3 drones or unidentified aerial phenomena being seen hovering over Canada's nuclear facilities. What do we know about this? Is our security safe? Now, as you know, I've been talking about Canada's role in ufology for the last couple of years. And look, for our American audience, this may not be, top of the line information because you guys got a lot of woo down there. But up here, it's been a silent topic. The question is, will it take off? Now, I know myself and Daniel Otis, the freelance journalist who broke this story yesterday, literally have been working on this together for a while. All right, I was able to proudly give Daniel the in that he needed to get some stories from the inside from some of my sources within Canada's capital of Ottawa. And together, we've been pursuing a lot of information and sharing information, most of it privately, because at this point of the game, we got to figure out who the players are, what is happening, why is it happening, but most of all, why has it been so silent? Now, I've got an opportunity to talk to my sources in Ottawa. I got an opportunity today to talk again with Daniel Otis, and we're pretty happy over what went on. We're very happy. So the big thing is this. Why does it mean so much? Well, there are a number of reasons. Canada has a long history of being involved in the UFO field. Okay, this goes back to a gentleman named Wilbur Smith back in the 50s and 60s, whom the American government would actually call on to give UFO information to their own spooks. Now, there are a bunch of different projects, a bunch of top secret events that have happened since then. Everything from Project Blue Book to Project Sign to Project Everything. But where is Project Dammit Canada Get Off Your Asses and Get Into the UFO Game? This is what MP Larry Maguire has done. Now, there are a couple of obstacles that need to go over here. Number one, will he continue the pressure of talking about unidentified aerial phenomena not only in committee meetings, but around Ottawa as well, namely question period during House of Commons sittings? This is where it would make the most impact. Let us hope he does. Number 2, will the Canadian media catch on? And I can tell you right now, as I predicted yesterday with Victor Vigiani, so far, the Canadian media has not caught on to what he asked. Has not deemed it important enough if they've seen it at all, which I highly think I doubt they have. Why? Because, let's face it, the Canadian media is not watching some sort of standing committee meeting over nuclear facilities. However, where they may be able to pay attention now is because of what's happening in Ukraine, where the Russians seem to be firing their rockets into a nuclear energy facility, where if it blows up, it would be more disastrous than Chernobyl itself back in 1986. That's just what this world needs. So are the aliens now hovering over nuclear facilities in Canada? We have to find out. This would probably be rated under high security, and any findings probably would be hidden from the public at this time due to national security. Look, it's an ugly world out there. We don't know if it is aliens or if it is the Germans, the Chinese, the Iraqis, the Afghanis, I don't know, pick a country. Russia, China, Japan, North Korea? Who knows? But what we do know is that it's happening. And what we do know is the door has been opened. Now, we know this is going to be a fight getting this into the mainstream. We really do. Spaced Out Radio is pseudo-mainstream, being on 6 terrestrial radio stations, but only 1 in Canada at Saga 960 AM in Mississauga, Ontario, which is by Toronto, about 30 minutes and a couple hours from Ottawa. We also know that Daniel Otis, the freelance writer who broke the story, will literally, continue his press. And now that he's working 3 days a week for the Canadian Television Corporation, CTV, it might be able to get some legs. People are starting to trust his word. So, we now have to keep up the pressure. The rest of the media in this country is not, so it's up to us. And trust me, it's a fun war. All right? I can tell you right now, I texted with Lou Elizondo yesterday regarding what Larry Maguire had stated, and Elizondo responded to me with this. He says, I have a good update for you regarding this. Do I know what it is yet? No, he hasn't responded. I'm sitting on bated breath here. Bated breath. Waiting. Fingers crossed. Waiting that it is something good. Something juicy. But the other thing that this does too is it also establishes Canada's role in NORAD with UAP. Recently, due to breaking news right here on Spaced Out Radio, we found out that members of the Scientific Coalition of UAP Studies, along with Hal Puthoff, met with members of Parliament in Canada to try and find out what is Canada's role exactly with this. Perfect. It needed to happen. Now, I don't know for a fact, but by Elizondo's text to me, I would say there's a good chance that maybe he's met with Canadian officials. I would say there's a good chance that maybe Chris Mellon has as well, but we just haven't heard about it. The fact that Canada is getting interested in this subject is good. It's good for the citizens. It's good for the media if they ever get their heads out of their butts to cover this subject. And it is good for everybody in the United States who's been putting pressure on the U.S. to bring this topic to light. And it also provides another angle that the American media may catch on to before the Canadian media ever does, to figure out what is happening over friendly Canadian skies. Now, just a couple of days ago, Daniel Otis also released a report, 290 pages of almost 500 reports of UAP encounters that included airline pilots, military, police, citizens like you and me. Happening over the years. It needed to happen. Look, there is big news with this subject. We all know it's getting buried. It will be buried because it's not as juicy as Ukraine right now versus Russia. It's not as juicy as COVID, even though COVID is winding down everywhere on this planet except my province of British Columbia and maybe California. It is also not as juicy as being woke, which our media now is. And you may disagree with me. You'll be like, how dare you, Dave, say that? Hey, I'm a former member of the mainstream media. I remember when a newsroom used to call a story point and counterpoint when they used to report on stories that actually affected people, and they weren't reporting on the I'm offended crowd on a daily basis. Not at all. They were about getting news out, not opinion. And that's what news is. News sometimes is supposed to hurt people. Not hurt people, hurt, people. All right? The news isn't supposed to be comfortable. It isn't supposed to be woke about safety rooms in universities, about whether or not, we should be killing pipelines, whether or not we should be killing animals for food. All right? It's not about that. The news is about telling stories that are affecting people around your area. That's what it is. It's not about feelings. It is supposed to be cold. It is supposed to be uncomfortable. It is supposed to be for everyone. It is also supposed to be the voice and ears of the population and not segregated groups. That's what it's about. So, if the media is smart in Canada, which they are not, especially around UFOs, they will not pick this up. They should. They should be paying attention because between myself, Victor Vigiani, and Daniel Otis, this story has traction. We messaged on Twitter and via email dozens of media outlets and journalists across Canada to say, hey, Canada just got in the UFO game. We were met with silence. And that's not very comfortable, especially on a topic such as this. Now, look, I understand that there are not very many people passionate about this subject as much as I am, or as much as Victor Vigiani or Daniel Otis. But you know what? UFOs, UAP, are a reality that we need to start taking a little bit more seriously, especially in Canada here, being best friends and partners in everything with our beautiful friends in the United States. We have no choice. We need to be able to do this. We need to do it together. And if Canada isn't holding up their end of the bargain, shame on them. But we also need more members of Parliament, like Larry Maguire, who are going to come on out and talk about this subject and ask those difficult questions on the record, on camera, in Ottawa, Ontario, the nation's capital. The best thing we can hope for now is that Larry Maguire does not go silent, but instead decides to push this subject and this topic further. He has to get it into the House of Commons, and he has to get it into question, period. Otherwise, this subject will fall right on the floor, like so many politicians do each and every day with the topics that they are concerned about. And that is your Dave 101. All right, let's get to Shirky Poo's news, shall we? All right, let's see what Shirky Poo has for us tonight. A woman claims to have experienced her first alien encounter during the COVID lockdown, and now the aliens won't leave her alone. Yet she has taken some incredible, mysterious footage of lights that she is convinced are UFOs. Lily Nova, who's from Missouri, and we're going to try and get her on this show, says she had her first extraterrestrial encounter at the end of 2020 after taking up astrophotography during the lockdown to cure boredom. Now, she experiences ET visits on a daily basis as aliens approach her in all manner of unearthly spacecraft. She said, "My first encounter with aliens and UFOs was very intense. I went outside for some fresh air one night and immediately locked my eyes with bright light hovering over the neighborhood. Oh, wow. I started investigating and realized it was a UFO. Seconds later, I looked away briefly, and when I looked back, there was a second craft that was much closer. I could actually see the triangular shape of the craft. The UFO did some impressive maneuvers to show me that it wasn't a regular aircraft before they disappeared above me. It really spooked me because aliens and UFOs aren't something I have thought about much before. It was a total reality-shifting experience. A couple of months later, I had my second encounter, and after that it kept happening more frequently, and now I'm having experiences daily. During my encounters, I have always been able to see what the beings look like." Oh, here we go. We got some woo now. On one of the first beings I saw was a girl with light blue skin. She had no hair, but she was very beautiful. She was wearing a skin-tight gray suit, and I saw her shipmates standing behind her in the same uniform. I've also seen other groups of beings with light blonde hair, fair and glowing skin, and bright blue eyes. Oh, she gets the good-looking ones. Damn her. I believe they send messages of themselves to me through telepathy. I think they are easing me into an introduction, as it would be such a shocking experience for any human to have an alien walk up to you. It truly is. I can vouch for that one. Lily believes these extraterrestrial beings then gave her some space to process the experience before happening again. She added, "I abandoned my career as a nutritionist because it was overtaken by my passion to find out more about UFOs and aliens. Now she claims to have developed a sixth sense and intuitive gut feeling for when they are going to appear to her. She said, "Since the shock wore off, I just feel joy, love, and peace. They are beautiful and positive experiences. Sometimes I even bawl my eyes out crying while it's happening. I believe that they have come to me because I believe in them. I am open-minded and I am welcoming them towards me. It has been a fascinating journey to learn about the experiences and to create the incredible connection that has been formed." Yeah, we got to get her on the air. I've already sent her messages personally. Got to do this. All right. For some men, this is going to be a dream. For others, they're going to be like, "Oh no, this is way too much." Yep, it's a 3-for-1 deal marriage. Triplet sisters in the Democratic Republic of Congo all proposed to the same man on the same day. Although he almost fainted by the polygamy request, the man eventually said yes to all three, to his parents' shock. "My parents don't understand what I'm doing," says the man, only identified as Luizo. He added to his family that they didn't attend the wedding. Why not? I guess they didn't like all that love. So the colorful ceremony took place in the town of Kalele in South Kivu province, and their story was detailed earlier this week by Afromax English, a video viral special. Oh, look at those brides. They are beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Luizo first met Natalie on social media, fell head over heels for her. When he visited her home, he found out she had two identical sisters, Nadije and Natasha. Soon, all three were smitten with him. After meeting all three, Luizo couldn't tell them apart and had asked which one was which, but soon he fell in love with the triplets, and what a time was right. Well, the trio decided to give him the ultimatum. When we told him he had to marry all of us, he was shocked, said one of the wives, but because he had already fallen in love with all of us, nothing could stop our plans since we are so in love with him. Well, that would be one expensive divorce if that happened. Florida man, who is absolutely built like the Incredible Hulk, went wild at Orlando International Airport February 24th. Video, of course, caught. As the clip shared on YouTube by Jessica Smith shows the hulking man, Ryan Austin Martin, man with 3 first names, trying to punch down a door and challenging people to fight him in the airport. Martin apparently didn't like that he was being filmed, saying, "You want to see a show? I'm going to effing put up a show." Then he punches a door and yells, "Who wants to fight? Let's go." Police later said he had gotten into a fight with his wife and pushed his 6-year-old daughter. Oh, what a jerk. What a jerk. He also said at one point, "Yo, pal, don't even think of coming over here. You're going to end up dead." Yeah, Orlando police arrived, tasered him, and, now he's in jail. Isn't that always the case? What a way to ruin a family vacation. Terrible. I want to say a big thank you to Shirky Poo for the fantastic news. Big thank you to myself for the Dave 101. That was hard work. Super Duke from World Bigfoot Radio. Swamp Dweller for another amazing story. And Craig Weiler talking parapsychology and the Ganzfeld experiment. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAB, Revolution Radio, Spreaker, Facebook, the Space Travelers Club, and on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. This show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends,
make a mistake, we're watching.
We own the night.
We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you.
Mr. Bumblefoot, take us home, will ya? Yes, the Woo Train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, bring them. We got room. Good night.
In a world that's a little simpler comes the tale of Veltima fungicide. Swift, simple, and secure. It's a corn-growing story without all the drama. Unless you add totally epic music, really random sound effects, and a cool announcer guy. Get ready for the blockbuster yields of the summer with Veltima fungicide from BASF. Coming soon to a field near you. Always read and follow label directions.
Today, what business needs most is creativity. So let's create AI with integrity, not bias. Security that hunts for threats in the wild. Cloud management that requires less management. And new ways for business to do business. Let's create, at scale, right now, together. Let's prototype, let's tweak, let's test, let's adapt. Let's create something that changes everything. IBM. Let's create. Learn more at IBM.com.